I still remember the way my grandson's hand trembled in mine that evening. His tiny fingers were ice cold, though the ballroom was warm with candlelight and the hum of music. We were seated at table 8, right in the middle of the wedding hall. Laughter rose around us, glasses clinked, and the scent of roasted meat filled the air. Yet for me, the world narrowed down to the pale face of my 7-year-old grandson, Leo. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice quivering like a trapped bird. "Please, let's leave, right now." I leaned closer, brushing back a strand of hair from his damp forehead. "What's wrong, my boy?" I asked. But instead of answering, he fixed me with those wide, frightened eyes and whispered words that froze my blood. "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" Something in his voice, so urgent, so unlike his usual childlike tone, made my heart stop. I bent down, slowly lifting the edge of the white linen cloth. The space beneath the table was dark, full of shadows, with only the glint of chair legs and Leo's polished shoes swinging nervously. And then I saw it. A small folded piece of paper, ordinary, almost invisible, yet its very presence screamed danger. My hands shook as I reached for it. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, they all faded. I unfolded the note under the flicker of candlelight, and my breath caught in my throat. "Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving." My heart dropped like a stone into water. Shrimp. The one food that could kill Leo in a heartbeat. His allergy was no secret. Everyone in our family knew it. A single bite could close his little throat forever. I clutched the paper with trembling hands. The world blurred as I looked at my grandson pressed tightly against me, his small chest rising and falling in panic. His life, his very life, was hanging on the edge of this slip of paper. In that moment, I felt something inside me harden. Whatever joy surrounded us, whatever glittering celebration this wedding was supposed to be, it had all turned into a trap. My boy was in danger, and I would not let anyone take him from me. I didn't wait. I couldn't. With Leo's hand in mine, I rose abruptly, nearly knocking over a half-empty glass of wine. Conversations at nearby tables paused, but I didn't care. All I saw was that crumpled note burning in my palm. I spotted a waiter I had noticed earlier, a young man named David, polite, with a shy smile. He had served us bread just minutes before. I marched straight toward him, my breath shallow, my legs heavy, but my voice sharp as a blade. "Who gave you this?" I demanded, thrusting the note into his hands. His eyes flickered across the words. Instantly, his face drained of colour, his lips parted, stammering. "Oh my God, it's my note. I dropped it, but a woman, someone, she asked me to take it to the chef. I swear I didn't know." I leaned in closer, my voice trembling, but strong enough to shake him. "Do you understand what this means? My grandson, he could have died." The boy's hands shook, his tray rattling. He looked like he might faint. "Please, ma'am, I didn't know. I was told to pass it on." The other waiters stopped what they were doing, their eyes darting to us. The sound of glasses clinking seemed miles away now. I felt as though the entire room had become a stage, and only I and this trembling waiter stood in the spotlight. My chest ached with fury and fear. Who was cruel enough to slip such an order into a wedding, a day meant for love? And why target Leo, my innocent boy? I glanced back. Through the crowd of laughing guests, I saw Leo still sitting at our table, pressed against my adopted daughter Lucy. His little hands clutched her sleeve, his eyes fixed on me like I was the only thread keeping him safe. I took a deep breath, fighting the tears burning behind my eyes. I had lived through storms before. I had buried loved ones, held dying hands, and seen betrayal wear the mask of love. But never, not once, had I felt such a cold hand press against my heart as I did in that moment. My family was under attack, and I would not sit silent. The strange thing is, if you looked around that hall, you would think it was a perfect evening. Golden chandeliers glittered above us, scattering light over tables dressed with white roses. A jazz band played softly in the corner, their melody weaving through the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation. The waiters floated gracefully between tables, serving delicate plates of shrimp cocktails and roasted lamb. On the surface, it was beauty, celebration, joy. But I have lived long enough to know, sometimes beauty hides rot. My son Alex, the groom, stood in his navy suit across the room, raising his glass in a wide smile. He looked happy, radiant even. And beside him, the new bride, Ava, dazzled in her beaded gown, her laughter ringing loud and clear. Cameras flashed, guests clapped. Everything about her was polished, perfect, flawless. Yet as I sat there at table 8, clutching Leo's trembling hand, I felt the hollowness in that beauty. It was a celebration wrapped around something dangerous. Leo pushed away the shrimp plate earlier. I noticed it then. The boy who once loved food was shrinking back from the table, pushing his toy car back and forth on the linen as if that small red car was the only world he could trust. His silence, his avoidance, signs I had ignored. Now, with that note clenched in my hand, I saw it all clearly. The music, the roses, the laughter, it was all noise hiding the cry of a frightened child. I turned my gaze back to Ava, her jeweled dress catching the light. She smiled too perfectly, moved too gracefully, laughed too freely. I felt a thorn deep in my chest. Perhaps I had felt it from the beginning, though I told myself I was only being overprotective. But tonight, under the golden chandeliers, I saw through the shimmer. Some joys are real, some are staged, and I feared I was looking at the latter. As I held Leo close, my mind betrayed me, dragging me back to a different time, a softer time. When the seat beside Alex had been filled by someone else, Maria. Oh, Maria, my first daughter-in-law. I can still see her face in the sunlight that streamed through the kitchen window of their little house. Her smile was gentle, like the hush of dawn. She never raised her voice, never stirred trouble. She carried a warmth that made me feel at peace just by standing in the same room with her. I remember one windy afternoon in Phoenix. I walked into their backyard and there was Maria, standing on the porch with a basket of vegetables fresh from the market. Leo was just learning to walk then, his little legs wobbling as he chased a rubber ball across the grass. Maria's eyes followed him, filled with pride. "Mum," she would say, her voice like honey, "taste the chili I made. Tell me if it's good." We would sit together, me eating, her smiling, Leo crawling at our feet with his old toy car. Those moments were the kind you think will last forever. But life is not kind. I remember the night Leo burned with fever, his little body hot against Maria's chest. She wept silently, whispering, "Mum, I'm so scared." I stayed by her side all night, pressing damp cloths to his forehead, telling her, "Don't worry, honey. He's strong. He will be fine." By dawn, the fever broke, and Maria smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Mum. I don't know what I'd have done without you." And I thought, we will always be like this little family, whole, safe, wrapped in love. But that dream ended in a phone call. Cold, abrupt, a police officer's voice. "Mrs. Williams, there has been an accident." Maria was gone, just like that. Even now, when I hear rain beating against a window, I remember her funeral. The sky wept with us. Alex collapsed at the coffin. Little Leo, only 4, clung to my neck, whispering, "Grandma, where is Mommy?" How could I answer? How could I tell him that the one who loved him most would never come back? That was the day I promised myself, I will protect this boy, no matter the cost. And now, years later, as I sat in that glittering ballroom with a deadly note clenched in my hand, I realized my promise was being tested. The day we buried Maria, the sky itself seemed to cry with us. Heavy rain pounded against umbrellas, soaked through black coats, and turned the cemetery earth into mud that clung to our shoes. I held Leo in my arms. He was only 4 then, too young to understand the weight of death, too young to carry the word forever. He pressed his little face against my shoulder, his voice soft and confused. "Grandma, where is my mommy?" What could I say? How do you tell a child that the sun of his world has set, never to rise again? I kissed the crown of his wet hair and whispered, "She's in a beautiful place, my love, a place where there's no pain." But inside my heart was splitting. Alex, my son, stood before the coffin, his strong shoulders shaking like a boy again. He didn't speak. He couldn't. His whole body bent under grief, as though the rain itself pressed him down. I had never seen my son so broken, and it terrified me. When the final prayer ended and the coffin sank slowly into the ground, I felt something inside me sink too. I knew life would never be the same. Maria was gone, but her love, her tenderness, lingered like perfume on the empty air. And I thought, how will we survive this? After Maria's death, Alex was not the same man. Grief hollowed him out. He buried himself in work, leaving early in the morning and returning long after Leo was asleep. He said it was to provide, to distract. But I knew it was to run from the pain. That left Leo in my hands, my poor boy. His laughter faded, his words grew fewer. He would sit for long stretches, clutching his little red toy car, staring at nothing. Sometimes he would tug at my sleeve at bedtime and whisper, "Grandma, tell me a story about Mommy." And I would, my throat tight, my eyes burning. But I would tell him about how Maria used to sing lullabies as she folded his clothes, how she cut apples into small stars to make him smile, how she kissed his scraped knees and made him feel brave. I wanted him to remember her warmth, not the absence she left. Lucy, my adopted daughter, became our lifeline in those dark days. She came often, carrying colouring books, cookies, or just her open heart. She sat with Leo for hours, teaching him to draw, laughing gently when his stick figures toppled sideways. Sometimes I caught her eyes lingering on Alex when he entered the house, exhausted. It was a quiet gaze, full of something I didn't dare name. The house grew quieter over time. No more Maria's laughter, no more spontaneous singing. Just routine and silence, and the weight of loss pressing on all of us. Still, every night I tucked Leo in and whispered, "You are safe. Grandma is here." It was a promise I repeated like a prayer. It was nearly 2 years later when Alex walked into my kitchen with a glow I hadn't seen since before Maria's death. He leaned against the doorframe, his voice unsteady but full of something like hope. "Mom," he said, "I want you to meet someone." I dried my hands on my apron, my heart tightening. "Someone new? Already?" I tried to smile, but my chest ached with unease. That evening she arrived, Ava. She stepped into my home in a pale blue dress that clung perfectly to her figure. Her hair fell in soft waves, her lips painted a delicate red. She smiled as though the world was her stage. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams," she said sweetly, her eyes scanning the family photographs on my wall. One photo caught her gaze, Maria holding a baby Leo. I watched the way her eyes lingered there, just a beat too long before she turned away with a practiced smile. At dinner, she complimented my cooking with enthusiasm. "This enchilada is divine. You must teach me, Mrs. Williams." Her tone was polite, but something about it felt rehearsed, like lines in a play. Leo sat quietly at the table, pushing food around his plate. Normally he would chatter about school or ask for extra bread, but that night he was silent. When Ava handed him a chocolate bar from her purse, he didn't take it. He looked away. I noticed. I always notice. Children see things adults miss. Alex, though, was charmed. He laughed at her jokes, poured her wine, his eyes glowing with a light I feared would blind him. And as I cleared the dishes that night, I whispered to myself, Something about this doesn't feel right. In the weeks that followed, Ava became a steady presence. She visited often, always with her perfect smile, always eager to help. She washed dishes, played hostess, hummed cheerful tunes. To others, she looked like the picture of kindness. But I began to see the cracks. One afternoon, I overheard her voice shift when she thought I wasn't listening. Sharp, cold. "Stay still, Leo. Don't act like a baby." The words cut into the air like glass. I froze in the kitchen. My knife paused above the onion. When I entered the room, her voice instantly softened. "Look at the tall tower Leo built. Isn't he clever?" Her smile was wide, but her eyes betrayed something darker. Leo's face told me more than words ever could. His lips pressed tight, his eyes searching mine, pleading. Another time she offered to take him to the park. When they returned, she gushed about how much fun he had. But Leo's shirt was dirty, his eyes downcast, his toy car clenched tightly in his hand. "Did you have fun, my boy?" I asked. He only nodded slightly, refusing to meet my gaze. And then there was the teacher's quiet concern. "Mrs. Williams," she said softly, "Leo has become withdrawn lately. He doesn't speak much in class. Is something happening at home?" I brushed it off, but inside my stomach knotted. Piece by piece, signs gathered like storm clouds. Ava's smile, so dazzling to others, began to look like a mask to me. Behind it, I feared, was a shadow I did not yet understand. And Leo, my sweet grandson, was the one caught in its path. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I first realized how heavy silence could feel inside a child. I had gone to collect Leo from school. His teacher, Mrs. Davis, pulled me aside, her voice low but full of concern. "Mrs. Williams," she said gently, "Leo speaks less and less each week. He doesn't answer questions. He sits alone. Is everything all right at home?" Her words struck me harder than she knew. I forced a smile, assuring her it was just adjustment, but as I walked Leo home, I felt his little hand tug at my blouse. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I don't want to go home with Miss Ava." I froze. My heart twisted. "Why, my love? Miss Ava cares for you." The words felt bitter even as I spoke them. Leo shook his head, firm for once, his clear eyes burning with truth. "No, Grandma. She doesn't love me." I bent down, stroking his cheek, trying to calm the storm in his small chest. But inside me, another storm was breaking. Children rarely lie about love. They feel it, or they don't. And Leo had spoken his truth. That night, as he slept curled against his toy car, I sat by his bed whispering prayers. "Lord, open my eyes. Don't let me ignore the signs." The cracks became harder to ignore. One Saturday morning, Ava insisted on taking Leo to the grocery store while Alex worked overtime. I stayed behind, knitting on the porch, praying for peace. When they returned, I heard Ava's sharp voice as she stepped through the door. "Leo dropped a bag of candy. I had to pay for it. Such a clumsy boy." Her words stabbed the air. Dabbed. Alex, tired, frowned and scolded his son. "Leo, you must be more careful. You're a big boy now." I saw Leo lower his head, twisting his small hands together, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He looked at me, pleading silently. I went to him, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Don't worry, my boy, it was just candy." But inside, I raged. Why such harshness over a child's mistake? Why so little grace? Later, when I stepped into the kitchen, I overheard her again. "Sit still, Leo, you always make a mess." Her tone was cold, stripped of sweetness. Yet the moment she noticed me, her voice flipped back into sugar. "Mrs. Williams, our Leo is so clever. Look at the block tower he built." But Leo's eyes told the truth. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud. He was shrinking. And I thought of Maria. How different love had felt when she was alive. In the middle of that growing darkness, there was one steady light, Lucy, my adopted daughter. She loved Leo as though he were her own child, and he clung to her like a lifeline. I will never forget his 7th birthday. Lucy had spent the morning baking a chocolate cake, his favourite. When she brought it out, candles flickering, Leo's whole face lit up for the first time in months. "Aunt Lucy, you made it for me!" he shouted, wrapping his little arms around her waist. She bent down, kissing his hair. "Eat a lot, my love. It's all for you." I stood back, my eyes misty, watching the flame of joy flicker again in his heart. But not everyone celebrated. Ava stood to the side, clapping slowly with a forced smile. Her only gift was a pat on Leo's shoulder and a flat, "Happy birthday, champ." I saw how Leo's shoulders hunched at her touch, how his gaze dropped. My heart ached. Yet, in the glow of those candles, I also saw resilience. As Leo laughed with Lucy, cutting slices of cake with clumsy hands, I whispered to myself, the child still knows where real love lives. And I silently thanked God for Lucy, the girl who had stepped into our family's pain and kept the flame of tenderness alive. The weeks passed, and Ava's presence grew heavier. At dinner, she would laugh too loudly, pour Alex another glass of wine, and reach for his hand across the table. Her smile was flawless, but her eyes were restless. Leo sat quieter than ever, eating little, his toy car always close. Sometimes I would try to feed him bites of bread or fruit, but he often shook his head. He avoided Ava's gaze, as though even looking at her might burn. One evening, while Alex was distracted telling work stories, Ava leaned close to Leo, offering him candy again. "Here, sweetheart. It's very good." But Leo turned away sharply, his small fists clenched under the table. He didn't say a word, but his refusal was louder than any cry. I caught that look in his eyes, fear, distrust, pain, and I thought of the silent warnings I had ignored for too long. Later that night, as I cleared the plates, I stood alone in the kitchen and whispered to myself, "This cannot go on. Something is not right. I must watch closer, listen harder, because one day her mask will slip, and when it does, I must be ready." The golden Florida sun poured through tall windows that afternoon, flooding the ballroom in a glow that seemed almost too bright. The jazz band played softly, white roses glistened on every table, and the air was rich with the scent of roasted lamb and sweet wine. To the guests, it was a perfect celebration. But my heart was restless. I sat at table 8, Leo beside me, Lucy on his other side. Leo pushed his little red car back and forth on the tablecloth, whispering vroom vroom under his breath, seeking comfort in its tiny wheels. Lucy bent down to him now and then, breaking bread, coaxing a small smile from him. She was a gentle flame in the middle of all this glitter. Alex, my son, glowed in his navy suit, laughter spilling freely as he toasted the guests. And Ava, she dazzled in her beaded dress, every step a performance, her glass of wine never far from her hand. Cameras flashed, her smile never faltered. And yet, a thorn pressed deeper in my chest. Something felt staged, hollow, dangerous. When waiters laid shrimp appetizers across the tables, Leo carefully pushed his plate aside. "Don't you like this, my love?" I whispered. He shook his head quickly, eyes darting away. I wanted to press him, but just then a relative leaned over, praising how big he'd grown. I forced a smile, but inside, unease curled tighter. The music played, the laughter rose, and then Leo's toy car slipped from his hand, rolling under the table. He bent to retrieve it, and froze. His little face drained of colour. His hand trembled as he pulled out a folded paper. "Grandma," he whispered, clutching my arm. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" I took the note with shaking hands, opened it, and felt the world fall away. "Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving." I gripped the note so tightly it crumpled in my palm. The music and laughter blurred into silence. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. This was no mistake. This was an attempt to harm my grandson, to kill him. I rose to my feet, my voice trembling but sharp enough to slice through the room. "One moment, please." The entire ballroom stilled. Glasses froze mid-air. All eyes turned to table 8. My son, Alex, rushed over, concern written across his face. "Mum, what's wrong?" Without a word, I laid the note on the table and pushed it toward him. "Read it." He unfolded it. His smile vanished. His face turned pale. His hands shook. "What? What is this?" he stammered. Around us, whispers rose like wind through dry leaves. Guests leaned toward each other, confusion spreading. Ava swept toward us, her face a mask of perfect surprise. "What's all this?" she asked smoothly, her voice honeyed. But I saw it, the flicker in her eyes, panic trying to hide. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice firm though my hands trembled. "This is not a joke. This is an attempt at murder." The words landed heavy, echoing in the silence. Guests gasped. Some shook their heads, murmuring in disbelief. Ava laughed lightly, though her smile was stiff. "Mrs. Williams, surely this is a mistake. A child found a scrap of paper and you think it's a plot." She looked at the crowd as though to paint me paranoid. But I would not be silenced. I held the paper high. "This is no accident. My grandson's life was the target." A hush fell, so heavy you could hear the jazz band falter. All eyes were on us. Then, like a spark in dry grass, the silence broke. Lucy rose from her chair, her face pale but her eyes blazing. She clutched Leo to her chest with one arm, stepped forward with the other, and before anyone could stop her, smack! Her hand landed across Ava's cheek, the sound cracking through the ballroom like thunder. Gasps erupted. Forks clattered against plates. Ava staggered, her hand flying to her face, her perfect mask cracking for the first time. Tears welled instantly, but they were not of guilt. They were of fury at being exposed. "You see," she wailed, turning to Alex, "your sister is crazy with jealousy. She's attacking me for no reason." But Lucy's voice, cold and steady, cut through Ava's performance. "No reason? You tried to harm an innocent child on your own wedding day." Her words carried like fire. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Faces turned toward Ava, suspicion dawning. Alex stood frozen between them, his eyes darting from Ava's flushed face to Lucy's trembling but fearless stance. He looked lost, torn in two. I put a hand on the table, steadying myself, and said in a voice that carried every ounce of a mother's rage, "The mask is slipping, Ava, and the truth is coming out." Before Ava could spin another lie, another voice rose from across the room, weak, trembling, but clear. "Auntie, it wasn't me." All heads turned. It was Gloria, Ava's younger sister. Barely 18, with tears running down her face, she stood clutching her napkin. "She gave me that paper," Gloria sobbed, pointing at Ava. "She told me to hand it to the waiter. I swear I didn't know what it said." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even cries of disbelief. One relative slammed his fist on the table, his voice trembling with disgust. "How could anyone plan harm for a child?" Ava's eyes widened, fury twisting her face. "Shut up, Gloria!" she snapped, her mask torn completely now. "How dare you lie against your own sister?" But Gloria didn't back down. Her voice broke, but she pressed on. "I'm not lying. I only did what you asked." And in that moment, the room shifted. Doubt turned to certainty. Ava's laughter, her polished smile, her beaded gown, all of it was a hollow shell. The truth was spilling out raw and undeniable. Alex's face crumbled. His hands shook as he turned to Ava, his voice breaking. "Tell me the truth. Did you do this?" But Ava's silence, her trembling lips, said more than any denial could. The ballroom was chaos now, guests shouting, waiters frozen, Leo clinging to Lucy, his little body shaking with fear. And I stood tall in the storm, the paper clenched in my hand, knowing the truth had finally broken free. When the hotel security approached Ava and asked her to step outside, no one protested. The band had already fallen silent. The guests stood in clusters, whispering into their hands, eyes darting away when they met mine. I held Leo close, feeling the tiny thud of his heartbeat against my ribs. With each breath he took, my body unclenched a little more, like a fist remembering it could open. Alex stood before me, emptied of words. He looked older in those minutes than he had all year. The navy suit that had seemed so bright now hung heavy on him, like a borrowed life that didn't fit. He turned slowly, searching for something solid in a room that had turned to water. When his eyes found Leo, they filled with tears. I took his hand and pulled him down, and there on the ballroom floor, among scattered napkins, a fallen fork, and the shimmer of trampled rose petals, my son knelt before his boy. "Son," he whispered, voice hoarse with shame. I'm sorry I didn't see. I'm sorry I didn't protect you." Leo reached up with both arms and wrapped them around his father's neck without a word, the quiet forgiveness of a child settling on Alex's shoulders like a blanket. We left the ballroom. Not in triumph, not in anger, but in a tired, steady silence that felt like the first honest thing that had happened all night. The air outside was cool and damp, the kind that clings to skin and makes you notice your breath. Lucy walked beside us, one arm around Leo, the other holding my elbow as we descended the steps. She did not speak. She did not need to. There are moments when love is not a sentence but a posture, and hers said, "I am here. I am staying." In the days that followed, the house felt like we were living under a soft grey sky that hadn't decided if it would rain again. The phone rang. People asked questions. Some were gentle, some hungry for spectacle. I answered what needed answering and let the rest fall to the floor. I cooked simple meals: yam porridge, soft rice, stewed beans, the kinds of foods that ask nothing of a tired heart. Leo began to eat again, slowly, quietly, between drawings he made at the table: a red toy car, a kite, a stick figure family holding hands. Alex changed his routines without announcing them. He set an alarm earlier. He walked Leo to school and waited at the gate in the afternoon. He turned off his laptop after dinner. Once I watched him stand in Leo's doorway for a long time after bedtime, his hand on the frame, listening to the soft rise and fall of the child's breathing like a man listening to a fragile prayer. When he finally came to the kitchen, he sat at the table across from me and said simply, "No more running." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Lucy, for her part, stitched our days together like a quiet seamstress working by lamplight. She labelled jars in the pantry: no shrimp, no nuts. She wrote notes to Leo's teacher with tidy handwriting and a small smiley face in the corner that Leo said made his stomach feel warm. She mended the knee of his school trousers. She learned the schedule of his favourite cartoons and sat beside him, not to distract him, but to be with him, to occupy the same small world for 20 careful minutes. One evening, a fever came for Leo, sudden as summer rain. I found Lucy in his room with a basin and a soft cloth, humming while she dabbed his forehead, telling him a story about a little bird who flew through storms by keeping his eyes on one bright star. When Leo finally slept, Alex stood in the hallway, watching Lucy through the half-open door. His face, dear God, it was the face of a man finally seeing the shape of a truth that had been standing in front of him for years, unnoticed. I didn't disturb that seeing. Some revelations must land on their own feet. The gossip about the wedding swirled for a while and then thinned out, as gossip does when it cannot find more to feed on. People asked if we would press charges. I said our first task was to heal the child. Some wounds must be tended before battles are chosen. In our home, we set no grand speeches and made no public declarations. We kept small promises and let the small promises teach us how to live again. On a Saturday morning, Leo and Lucy flew a kite in the yard. The sun was kind, not boastful. The kite rose and dipped like a heartbeat, its tail flicking a sentence in the breeze. "Higher, Aunt Lucy!" Leo shouted, and they both laughed, the easy laughter that had been missing for too long. Alex stood by the fence, hands in his pockets, shoulders loose for the first time in months. He caught my eye. There was apology there, yes. But there was also a soft newborn thing that I recognized with relief. Hope. That night after dishes, Alex asked if he could sit with me. He lingered at the table like he used to when he was a boy, telling me about schoolyard games. "Mum," he began, voice steady, "I won't pretend I didn't fail. I did. But if you are willing, I want to do this right. For Leo. For us." He looked toward the hallway where Lucy was reading a picture book aloud, her voice making the pictures feel lit from within. "And I need to be honest," he said, eyes shimmering. "Every day Lucy has loved my son like he is the only child in the world. She's loved our family when I could not. I don't know the future. I only know I do not want to look away anymore." I said nothing wise. I only reached for his cheek, the way I did when he was small, and said the truest thing I had. "Then don't look away, my son. Keep looking at what is real." We didn't need a grand ending. We needed quiet mornings. We needed steady hands. We needed the kind of love that learns the difference between a polished mask and a sincere gaze. In the wake of the storm, we were learning to breathe again, each of us, and to notice the small bright star that could guide us through whatever weather came next. There is a kind of peace that doesn't come at once, but gathers, grain by grain, across ordinary days. It sits with you while you fold shirts warm from the line. It watches you as you stir the pot on the stove. It walks beside you when you carry sleepy limbs from the sofa to the bed. This peace is not loud, but it is faithful. Weeks after the wedding, the house felt different. The air seemed to hold its shoulders a bit lower. I would find drawings taped to the wall, shaky hearts, a kite, the red toy car. Leo's handwriting grew rounder, more certain. He laughed at breakfast again, the kind of laugh that starts in the stomach and bubbles up to the eyes. He began to ask for seconds, of rice, of story time, of being pushed higher on the swing. Sometimes healing is not a miracle. Sometimes it is a child asking for one more spoonful. Alex kept his promise. He went to school meetings. He learned the names of classmates. He memorized the colour of the backpack, the smell of the shampoo, the rhythm of the bedtime prayer. He apologized often, not with heavy guilt, but with the lightness of someone determined to do better, again and again, until the doing better becomes ordinary. He learned how to say no to late emails and yes to evening walks. He learned the difference between providing and being present. These are not the same lesson, but they share a root. As for Lucy, I have never been one to assign titles too early. Love should not be pushed on a stage before it finds its voice. But I will tell you what I saw. I saw a woman fold small socks with both hands and both eyes. I saw her sit cross-legged on the floor listening. I saw her shoulder carry weight without complaint. I saw her tenderness sharpen into courage when needed. And on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I saw Leo, without prompting, take her hand and say, "This is my safe place." That sentence did not need ceremony. It already was one. Not all stories require a villain's punishment to be complete. Some require a family to choose itself clearly without apology. There were papers to sign, boundaries to draw, numbers to block. And we did all that, not with shouting, but with signatures and locked doors and a steady refusal to reopen the wound. If you want to know about justice, I will say this. Sometimes, mercy for a child is the strongest justice you can practice. We practiced it every day. One evening, rain returned, not the violent kind of the funeral, but a soft, forgiving rain that beaded on the window and made the street lamps look like halos. I brewed tea. The house smelled like nutmeg and old pages. Leo climbed into my lap, too long for it now, but still my little boy. "Grandma," he asked, "are we safe?" I kissed his forehead and answered the only way that matters. "Yes, my love. We are safe." Later, I stood by the window and thought about promises. The one I made on the day Maria was lowered into the ground. I will protect this child. the one Alex made at the kitchen table. No more running. The unspoken one I see in Lucy's steady hands. I will be here, not for applause but for the ordinary days. Some vows are worn quietly, like a ring under a glove. They do their work whether or not the world notices. I will not pretend I do not wake some nights, hearing the rustle of a paper under a table that is no longer before me. Fear is a creature that learns houses well. But I know what to do now. I put on my robe. I walk the small path I know by heart, down the hallway, past the family photos, to the door where a nightlight glows. I listen. I count the breaths of a sleeping child, and I remember we survived. We told the truth out loud. We chose each other. If you are listening to me now, maybe you have your own paper under the table, a quiet danger, a warning you keep folding and unfolding in your mind. Maybe you're wondering whether to speak, whether to leave the party of appearances and stand in the unglamorous brightness of truth. Come, sit by me. I am an old woman, but I have learned a few small things I can give you, like bread wrapped in a napkin for the road. Listen to the children. Their silences speak. Respect the thorn in your chest. It is your body's way of telling the truth before your mouth can. Choose the people who show up when there is no music. That is love. And when the world asks for your performance, give them your presence instead. Now, before we close, let me ask you like a grandmother who wants the family to stay close. If this story kept you company tonight, if it made you hold your child tighter, or call your mother, or sit quietly with your own scar and breathe a little easier, please like this video so it reaches another heart that needs it. Subscribe and stay with us in this little circle where we tell the truth gently and hold each other up. And in the comments, tell me, what paper did you find under your table? You don't have to name names. Just tell me the lesson so another mother, somewhere, can read it and feel less alone. On the screen, I'll leave 2 more stories. One for when you need courage, and one for when you need rest. Take whichever you need. I'll be right here, waiting for you, kettle warm, lamp on. God keep you. God keep the children. And may your home be the safe place your heart can return to, again and again, like a bird that always finds its way back to the light.